Hello, everybody. Back again for another Monday Mayo chat with Carice Laguerre and me, Brittany. We're excited to be on here and to talk about our next burning topic. But yeah, Carice, how's your day going?
Oh, good. It's so early.
It is so early. Usually, when I think about doing this, it's like a nighttime thing with a nice nightcap. But yeah, bright and early. I definitely have my coffee full and ready to go for the day. But anyways, so let's get started. So the question is, what do you do when you're working in a dental practice and your dentist does not support you talking about really anything airway related, whether it's myofunctional therapy, tongue tie, what have you? So what do you do? I mean, do you quit? Do you leave? What do you do?
I mean, if you can do that, more power to you. Yes, you can just walk out and be like, I'm not doing this anymore. That's great. But for most of us who can't just walk out of their job, I would say you got to get creative. I was very creative with how I would kind of tiptoe around things, or I would just tell them that I saw something or I noticed something, that I had just been to a CE course and it's not something that the doctor is really familiar with. And, the truth of that is that many times I wasn't just coming off of a CE course, but again, you're being creative with your lies to your patients. Okay. So I got out of a CE course. The doctor wasn't there, but it was phenomenal. And I hope to get this information to the doctor in the near future. But for now, I'm noticing such and such in your mouth. And it's giving me enough concern that I just wanted to mention it to you. We'll keep an eye on it. And if you want to read more about what it is that I am referencing, here are some books. I used to have like a business card that would have like the books on it. I love 6 Foot Tiger, 3 Foot Cage, or Jaws, or, I just had all that stuff there. That way they would be able to go and get more information if that's something that they were interested in, or at least there was a note that way I knew to talk about it again in 6 months.
Yes, you definitely want to do that, right? Leave yourself a note so it reminds you that you had that conversation. And I think you have to figure out first, like, what kind of office are you working in? Are you in one where the dentist doesn't want anything to do with it, but is okay with you talking about it? Are you in a practice where the dentist is like, no, that's voodoo. I don't want any of that here. And you can't talk about it, because then, I mean, that puts you in a really, really, really tough position. I mean, one, is your doctor hearing you? Are there issues there with maybe even some respect? I mean, if they're not going to take the time to at least hear you out, maybe you can present a lunch and learn to the office, educate, right? Everything is education, but you have to be working with somebody that's willing to have an open mind. And unfortunately, there are providers out there that don't want to hear about it. And you know what? That's okay. But then that's going to be a really tough decision that you're going to have to make, right? Because you want to be somewhere where you feel like you can flourish and grow, and you want to have that support. So I think if you are in one of those practices, again, you can't blame anybody for not knowing what they don't know, but asking to do a lunch and learn and asking them to keep an open mind. I think a lot of us hygienists tend to have good relationships with our doctors, especially if you've been there for some time. So I would definitely start by educating the staff, and just like to Carice's point, saying, I went to this CE course, I went to this conference, I really want to share with you, the information. Or maybe if it's even a book that you want your doctor to read, and then you have a conversation following that. But education, whether it has to do with talking to your doctor and the rest of the staff, or education with your patients, right? It always comes back to educating them.
Definitely. I would ask 100% too if they have a study club that they currently attend, and if you can sit in on that. What is the beauty of being a hygienist, especially in these days and times, is that there's such a shortage. So like, they don't want you to go anywhere. So if they have to listen to you rant about something for an hour, then fine, we'll listen to it. Just like, keep your job, make sure your schedule, you're on time. But I would definitely ask if they have a study club, because if you could attend that study club and you're able to just get a word in, the practice that I had the most resistance, I guess, for, it was a DSO, but they had their own internal study club. And they were having this meeting where they were talking about just restorative cases and veneers, and this one case that would not stay. And I mean, it it was like Airway, red flags everywhere. And when I got my one little second to get a little comment in, I'm like, it's very obvious that there's a tongue tie. Do you see that on either side, there's not that same occlusion, like the occlusions class 1 over here, class 3 over there. You can see in this picture where they're biting that their tongue is literally sitting in between their teeth. Like, this is not a case that you should be doing restorative work on and then be surprised when it doesn't last, you know? And so from
I
that
wonder what
one
happened
thing,
there.
yeah. And so from that one little like statement, they were like, oh, wow, you do know something.
Mhm.
It's really enlightening for them. So if you get like a word in one way, try to get a word in where you can.
And I think, you know, we always talk about how valuable the intraoral camera can be for hygienists, capturing the tie, the attachment, the tongue sitting, like whatever you can capture to even use that as education. Well, obviously for your patients, but also for your provider. Like, look, I take a picture of that really prominent rugae. Listen, doc, that tongue has never been up there. Do you see how prominent this rugae is? And I mean, as long as you have, right, pictures are worth a million, although I guess it's not pictures anymore, it's videos according to social media platforms, but pictures will do in the dental office. So take pictures, use that as education for your patient, for your doctor. I think at the end of the day too, maybe even asking, you know, if you have a webinar that you want to attend one night that's hosted by whoever, ask your doctor to attend with you. It could just be an hour thing. I'm sure your doctor can take an hour out of his time. Maybe you guys can stay at the office. Maybe, I don't know if his assistant wants to stay. I don't know. Maybe you can make a office party out of it. I'm not sure, but just ask, have that conversation. And then I think if you get that major pushback time after time of trying, then maybe that's your cue that it's your time to take an exit from there, because you don't want to sacrifice who you are, what your goals are, what's important to you, right? At the end of the day, you're still a clinician. And if you're holding this information back from your patients, it's just not going to feel good, right? And it's not right either.
It's definitely not right. I think that's one of the best parts about being in Airway is that we're so passionate about all of this stuff, and you see something, you just got to say something. Like, even if you're at the airport and you see people sitting there mouth agape, you just want to hand them so much information. You're like, please, you're dying. But if we are just able to spread a little bit of that passion, we want to with all of our patients. And so to be restricted from that has got to feel very stifling. But be smart with your exit plan. Definitely be smart with your exit plan, because making a move doesn't necessarily mean that that next doctor is going to be more receptive. So it's a tightrope to walk.
Definitely. What would you say, Crease, if somebody wanted to do a short, you know, presentation during their lunch hour for their dental team? What are like 3 things you think that should be included in that, right? Because you don't want to, if this is new information to them, right? You don't want to bombard them with all this craziness. So you want to try to keep it a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say general, but maybe a little bit more general. Also, right, I think you would agree to also include in that for the dentist, like, what value is this going to add to you in your practice?
100%, you need to add the value. I would say anything that's relevant to that practice. And if they're going to let you do a lunch and learn, the most important thing I always say with lunch and learns is to ask, what at the end of this lunch and learn, what do you need to know? And so if it's going to have to be generic and they're like, I don't know what I want to know, then I would talk about parafunctional habits and airway. I would talk about, perio and airway. That's my big thing, oral function and perio. And then the last thing that I would definitely talk about is TMD, because a lot of offices are already seeing all of these things, perio, TMD, and parafunctional habits. Yep. So if we can relate it all together, and we're not talking about, we're talking about expansion and appliances and releases. Don't talk about any of that. The office doesn't care about that. Talk about what they care about.
Absolutely. I remember very vividly, this was like long before I became a myofunctional therapist, but we had a patient in the office that, like, religiously, every new crown that went on, he would break, like, within no time. And, he'd call and we'd joke in the office like, well, he's chewing on rocks again. And it's so prevalent, right? You see that a lot. And you have those patients where it doesn't make sense. Like, it did not make sense to my doctor. He didn't understand what the heck, like, literally, are you chewing on rocks? Because this makes no sense that this keeps happening. So, I mean, to be able to add that value to the restorative work, to be more confident, like, okay, we are first getting to the root cause of the problem, right? Addressing that airway. So we know that this restorative work is going to last, right? Well, unless of course, they're like, I don't know, just eating on sugar all day long, getting super recurrent decay everywhere. But you get my point.
Definitely.
What other things do you think, I'm trying to think what else we can talk about in terms of, because I know we want to stay on topic of hygienists that are working in offices that don't really feel that support. I mean, I guess networking with other hygienists in different groups, right? Maybe people are either in the same situation or somebody was in the situation, learned from it. They're somewhere else. Like, ask around, join these airway groups. OMT for the RDH is like a super, super great group to be a part of. Ask people about their journeys. And I think in general, ask questions.
Absolutely. You've got to ask as many questions as possible. That's the only way that you really learn in life. Continue to be curious. But that is big in airway anyway. Like, you never really stop learning. And so that's going to be a standard. I think an important thing to kind of address is if there are more than one doctor in the office and one doctor's on board, but the other one isn't, and then you have this patient who typically likes to see the one doctor who's not really on board, who won't really back you up for whatever it is you're saying, like, how would you handle that, Brittany?
Well, first, I think you have to have a conversation. I think that you don't want to step on. So you're saying the doctor who's not in airway is seeing this patient. There's a clear airway problem. How do we figure that out? How do we address that? I do think that it has to be a conversation because you don't want to step on anybody's toes. And, having that conversation between you and the two docs and being like, listen, if there's something that I see that I think is a concern, is it okay at the end that we bring Dr. Airway in to look at this patient to get his thoughts on it? I would hope at the end of the day that the patient's best interest is at heart, right? So yes, I get, this is my patient, hands off your patient. I understand dentists can be very much like that. But at the same time, that's going to add value to your work too. So let's bring in that airway professional. If that's an avenue you don't want to go down, but you can at least accept that it is a thing and it does impact your dentistry that you are doing, I don't see any reason it can't be like a tag team effort.
Yeah, I love that, because at the center of all of this should really be the patient. And so if we're all working towards the patient and what's in their best interest, I think that everybody benefits. Dr. Airway benefits, and Dr. don't want to hear anything about Airway benefits.
Just on your headset, like, have a code word for Dr. Airway. Like, I don't know what the code word would be. Mile and Potty 3. Come on down. But yeah, right. I mean, we want to respect our colleagues, but we also have to make sure that our patients are getting the best care that they can. And that definitely needs to be a conversation. And even, I'm sure that would be a drift too between Dr. Airway and Dr. Non-Airway. Like, that's something that they also have to figure out on their end. Like, how are they going to handle it? It's just like anything else. If that doctor is going to be a specialist, what have you, in airway, there's no reason that doctor shouldn't come in. If you have a endodontist in your office or a periodontist in your office, right? And it's a perio case, you call the periodontist in, right? It's not taking that patient away from you, but you're calling in that specialist. So there shouldn't be any reason that this can't be treated the same. And to the point, when we talk about hygienists becoming myofunctional therapists, I don't think that it's absolutely necessary that every dental hygienist becomes a myofunctional therapist, but I think it's absolutely necessary that every dental hygienist knows how to spot myofunctional issues and be able to make that referral. So it's the same thing for the general dentist. If you don't want to treat airway, you don't want to do sleep, oral appliance, orthopedic, whatever. That's totally fine. But you have to know how to spot those red flags and then call in that specialist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because dentistry as a field and as a whole tends to be a little bit slow in making changes, right?
Mhm.
So we've got to step into that sort of more medical model where
Yes.
we do screen for everything
Mhm.
and refer when we need to refer out.
And I think that like offices are going to start seeing it more and more. Like patients are becoming more and more aware of the importance of airway health. So like if you're not going to get on board, you're going to lose out.
Absolutely.
So again, maybe you don't want to do it in the office, but if you're not going to be able to recognize it and know where these patients have to go to get the care they need, I wouldn't be a happy patient. I'd be leaving that practice.
Absolutely. And it's very disappointing to know that since 2017, the ADA has pretty much advocated and made sure that that's in their policy recommendations that every dentist screens for this stuff. And so to not have that happening is a little disappointing.
Yeah, super disheartening. Um, and I don't, I mean, I guess that's a conversation for another day, right? Like why all this like defense against that? Like why, you wouldn't if it was something else, like I'm trying to relate it to something else dental wise. Why would you not listen to the recommendations by your organization? Like they're telling you this is what you need to do. Your dentist, that is now something that needs to be done. How do you just say, oh, nope, not going to do that? Like, are you just not going to check for cavities one day? It's
Yeah.
literally just as important, if not more.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Yeah, so the field, it's got a little ways to go. But if you're struggling with a particular office and you're not getting through to the practice or the practice owner and you're not able to make any progress, it might be time to consider making a shift
Mhm.
or, adjust your methods and how you're going about it.
Absolutely. Well, this was a great conversation again. I'm excited for our next one. I don't think we decided what the next topic's going to be, so it's going to be a surprise for everybody. But we hope
Yay.
that you all have a wonderful, wonderful, sparkling day, and we will see you at the next Mile Monday.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.